Bom, renovo aqui os agradecimentos a todos que nos acompanham, virtual e presencialmente, nesse painel 6 da nossa primeira PreCop26 São Paulo. Bom, o tema do painel é sustentabilidade. Eu tenho a satisfação agora de chamar à mesa o secretário Armando Júnior, o secretário em exercício de Desenvolvimento Econômico e Turismo da Prefeitura de São Paulo. Obrigado, secretário. Chamo também o Antônio Ademir Stroski, secretário do Verde e Meio Ambiente de Manaus. Por favor. Tatiana Garcia, por favor, doutora em Geografia Humana pela Universidade de São Paulo. Por favor. Marcos Poiato, diretor-presidente da Poiato Recicla. Luísa Santiago, líder da Fundação Ellen MacArthur. Essa é uma participação virtual da Luísa. Bom, o secretário Armando Júnior, em exercício, apresentará nessa mesa o Centro de Inovação Verde Bruno Covas, o Hub Green Sampa. É o primeiro centro na cidade de São Paulo voltado para startups de tecnologias verdes e de sustentabilidade. Um espaço localizado na Praça Vitor Tivita, na Zona Oeste de São Paulo, que no passado foi um incinerador de lixo, transformado hoje em um espaço não apenas de destaque na cidade de São Paulo, mas também internacionalmente. Por favor, secretário, a palavra é sua.
Muito obrigado, Rodrigo, muito obrigado a todos. É um prazer participar aqui ao lado dos nossos amigos de bancada aqui. Agradecer à secretária Marta Suplicy pelo convite de poder estar participando aqui da PreCop26, num tema tão importante que é a sustentabilidade para a Prefeitura de São Paulo. Esse é um dos setores que é prioritário.
This is one of the sectors which is priority for our management here in São Paulo. As Marta Suplicy also mentioned, this is one of the priorities of the management of the last years, when our mayor, Bruno Covas, took over the administration. He was the secretary of the Green in the state, had as its state our government. So this is one of the great themes of São Paulo Mayor, where we have several fronts and several documents. São Paulo today has 300,000 employees for accountability. This is very important compared with other sectors. For you to have an idea as well, we are here of Secretary of Development analyzing this department, and every day since the beginning of the pandemic, during the pandemic, since March of 2020, and now in August in 2021, the sectors that we followed, only two sectors had lack of employment in the city of São Paulo. Health, obviously, due to COVID-19, and sustainability and green economy. This is a sector that grows in comparison with the other employers, other jobs. And this was dealt with in our secretary, the Green Sampa. It's a program where we support the technology sector of sustainability in the more different fronts, acceleration, administration, innovation, entrepreneurism, and in its many departments, water, energy, mobility. It's a program that's very transversal, where we act together with other secretaries so that we can activate more and more these sectors here in São Paulo. In one of the great points that we did in the INSAMPA program, besides the accelerations and startups in green technology, we did the great mapping in the startups in São Paulo. We did courses of acceleration and monitoring and finance resources of the startups so they can develop. And today we created the Center of Green Innovation of Bruno Covas, which, as Rodrigo said, the Hub Sampa was conceived initially as one of ours. The idea was one of the public co-workers in the city of São Paulo, that we have already 14 public co-workers, and each of these co-workers, they have a theme. And we wish to do a co-working of sustainability to support entrepreneurism and startups of technological innovation. And we started to identify the sites where they had this. And there is a prerogative of the theme. This co-working became a hub, a green center of innovation. We did a square, a place in town. Many people who are watching us, which are not from São Paulo, there is a square, which is Praça Itcotílica, next to Editor Abril, Vitor Civita, close to Rio Pinheiros, one of the main points of São Paulo. It's a place, the square, well, it was a great dump place. It was an enormous dump place where the waste was put in a building. There was a building incinerator where all the waste was incinerated. Inside this building, we did a partnership with the Green Secretary, took the building for our secretary, gave it to Abrisampa, which is our agency who supports the entrepreneurs in São Paulo, and the square, we gave it to a private people. So this square is a place of leisure for São Paulo. And we remodeled the building completely. It has 3 stores. It's 3-story high. The first one we do the meetings and events. About 100 people. It takes about 100 people. The second floor, the startup of innovation, which are accelerated by São Paulo's mayor, the city hall. It goes through all the sectors of sustainability. And these startups are receiving acceleration for 1 year. And at the end of this year, we'll do a new calling for new startups can be started. And they get a place of attending, a place to work, all gratuitously in the city of São Paulo, with the acceleration, all the structure needed for them to develop this in the capital city. And in the second floor, our co-working for Sampa, which is open for everybody, Sampa for São Paulo. And they make an agenda for the usage with the co-working. Anybody can use that in São Paulo City, mainly if she is of this Department of Green Economy, of Sustainability. There are more things to say, but I don't want to be so long. So once more, thank you for this invitation, and we are open for debate. So, Secretary Armando, thank you very much. Now, Antônio Demir-Strosky, which is the Secretary of Environment in Manaus, agronomy engineer. Thank you, Secretary, for your presence, taking the floor. Good afternoon. First of all, thanks, Davi Almeida and the City Hall of São Paulo and Secretary Marta Suplicy. We have the opportunity to be here, sharing what we're doing in Amazon, mainly in Manaus. Let's see if my presentation is on the screen. Before that, I invite you to do kind of visit our bioma, that is Amazonia. We have to share what we are doing that is positive, not only we ourselves, but the companies in Brazil and the governments that went to Paris. Everybody has to contribute. The department is very significant when you consider the issue sustainability, transport of energy and emissions. Amazonas state has a fantastic territory, just set geographically to point out the antagony in terms of this area. Manaus municipality uses more or less 100,081 kilometers, and the 0.7 of the territory of Amazonas, that is Manaus. We have the city of Manaus, which is alongside Rio Negro, Negro River, and our population is around 2.2 million inhabitants, the seventh in Brazil. The process of occupation and use of soil, the growth of the city, mainly horizontally, was not planned. It means invasion. In fact, this scenario, the territory, the biggest state with the governance of tropical forest, and the use is like that. In the middle of the state, we have a big city with not organized occupation. What do we do? The planning of division of soil in Manaus, it started centuries ago. And when we started with the free zone, the things progressed differently. And moreover, the fantastic hydrography, the rivers, the occupation, and the issue of the rivers. It's not easy to understand the permanent preservation, how to preserve the rivers, how to treat the rivers. It's another issue to be overcome. And what's the arrangement that we share with you now concerning sustainability and that we're working on in these sectors in our office? We carry on with the potential action that was started before us. We have, differently from what's really required by the environmental bodies, we have the issue of environmental compensation. It's trying to recompose the situation. and it was decided by the Municipal Council of Environment. So, in this case, we can start projects, public projects, and we receive compensation and exemption. We answer to the requirements of the environment regulation. It's our routine. But we have the environmental compensation that has been added to our program. So therefore, every week we have plants that native plants that are planted in Manaus. And this compensation, environmental compensation, permits that we create spaces for the plants, and that's a result of the soil division. And we also work on degraded areas. We do enrichment of the area. So that we deal the igarapés, that is the water source there. So the population near the river were used to degraded areas. We are improving that. Now we have areas for leisure, interaction, convivence. So this is a case that we are improving, and the results are very positive. It's a historical process. I have to comment. We have issues concerning climate change. In the 11 floods of the natural cycle in Manaus. What's happening now is the opposite of the flood. So there is a stagnation, and after that, slowly and slowly, we go to the flood season. So in Manaus, in the past, we reached 30 meters. In 1922, for 120 years, the floods reached, in 4 occasions, the highest peaks. So in 2021, we surpassed that. It was the biggest event of all. It was a singular fact, and it required a mobilization. So it's an event of our biomass, biosystem. It was the renewal of the biodiversity. Our institutional arrangement, you're seeing on the screen. I talked about the floods, and we have in this process what is the result of the environmental licensing is the revitalization of our parks. It's a small part in Manaus with the indigenous community, 35 different ethnies. With them, there is an understanding. They want a small park where they have their cultural identity respected. So we're doing that, and we'll try to have that in the municipal parks. In this process, we make it viable. So, and we do not finish with the problem because we do not have the public financial resources, but we intend to. I will not go into details here. It's about the code of the city of Manaus. It's a forest code. It's a wastewater landmark, natural policies about natural resources, etc. In Manaus, we have to permeate the other subjects in this sense. I'll stop here and I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, secretário Strosky.
Thank you, Secretary Strosky. Now I invite Dr. from USP, a lady that is studying what's happening in the terms of transport, especially in the Mercosul or Sur. Good afternoon. We have doctors with us. And it's a pleasure it's an honor sharing this afternoon with the presence of the representative of the private sector. And the theme is very involving, and it's taking our time in a pleasant way. And the material I prepared, I'll do it in 5 minutes if it's possible. Thank you for your presence and for the invitation. And I start my talk saying that sustainability is not only environmental issues. It's a proposal for development, interconnection, and incorporation of multiple dimensions: environmental, ecological, economic, social, cultural, political, institutional, and territorial. In the case of the city, territorial more than fundamental. So, to answer to the needs of people, present generation, future, we have to respect resilience of our Earth system. So sustainability is seen more and more as the north, the objective, the future of our country and humanity, i.e. intensification of the climate changes with the increase of the temperature of Earth, etc., stronger floods, longer droughts, and others. We call all that climate change. That's the theme of our COP26 that will be here with us very soon. Sustainability, unfortunately, is a concern that's getting more visibility when we see the catastrophic situations. And they affect not only nature, but humanity, people, community, cities. In the political scenery, the Agenda 2030, we have 17 objectives approved by 193 countries, United States, UN in 2015. It's a guideline for many actions, like the Sustainable Urban Agenda, the cities that say they are sustainable cities. Commitment of these targets based on development guidelines being in the future 15 years. That's the biggest challenge, not only for development, but the developing cities, the small ones and the big ones like São Paulo and even Amazonas. We've mentioned that ODS are voluntary in binational government. Example of the state of São Paulo, city of São Paulo that is incorporating the guidelines and metrics in the pluriannual plans. Besides that, companies, universities, civil societies are players influenced and influencing in terms of sustainability practice. This practice has to be considered to generate jobs, to use the leisure spaces, circulation, production system, agriculture, industrial, use of energy, production of energy, among others, like food and education. Considering the academia aspect, sustainability is not unanimous. There are diverging points, those that are favored, those that are against, and do not believe in productivity in terms of sustainability. Some examples. Complaining about difficulty to implement new models of production consumption because there are big footprints, for instance, agriculture or industry. Sustainability may barrier economic growth because there is the invasion of natural areas, so important for the water source, as mentioned by the Secretary. And sometimes sustainability is used by capitalism to obtain advantages. We know there are greenwashings used not adequately to promote products, advertisements, etc., that are sustainable in terms of environment. Two sides of this coin. On the other hand, we know there is a big potential of more jobs and more income in several sectors our Secretary has mentioned that are incorporating sustainability, agriculture, organic production, clean technology, renewable and sustainability, and that are around the world. In Brazil, mainly those focused on energy production, problems that we are having in Brazil now, clean and renewed energy, water resources, another problem that we have, like waste, technical solutions to sustain urban mobility. To close up, we have to acknowledge that the transition to impact, social impact in a positive way, its high cost depends on sensibilization, acknowledgement of the whole society. So that's why the tax objectives in terms of green aspects, so people will adhere to sustainability if it's positive. There are other difficulties and criticisms, but I would like to close my words saying that there are 3 points that are important and are linked to the other panels here. Education, as mentioned before. For sustainable development, it has to be formed by subjects incorporated effectively in the learning of every curricula, every aspect of education, so the youth and children will not repeat the bad habits we have in terms of environment. Yes, they have the spirit of respect to collectivity, bioethics, entrepreneurship that is sustainable. The importance of having public policies destined to sustainability, and the important role of public management as the main players of production of a green economy, human development, efficient with resources, transparency, according to the Agenda 2030 that we call ECI, is a theme of the private sector.
And the sustainability will only happen if there was governance. And it's fundamental the concern and investment of the public investment and all the levels of productive sectors, academics, and the sector in department as a whole. I congratulate São Paulo with all the things they have done, the diplomacy,
pharmacy recognized globally, and in special the Hobby King, that will have a reference of sustainability in the practice in Brazil. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, doutora Tatiana Garcia, pelas brilhantes
I
reflexões.
thank Liana Garcia for her collaboration and her presentation. Being a representative of the academic world, representing with other representatives, and I thank you very much. And now, Marcos Poiato, President of PreCop26, that does the recycling of residues. I have the agenda that he said done with the recycling. And thank you very much. You have the floor. Thank you. Good afternoon, those that are here in presence and those virtually. First, I'd like to thank the opportunity that the Secretary of International Relations from São Paulo gave us for a subject so important and relevant for this debate, so involving, as the Professor Tatiana mentioned, and talk a little bit of our reality. Sometimes if you work in sustainability and become environmental entrepreneur, it seems crazy. So please don't look at me as somebody crazy, but as an entrepreneur, a socio-economic entrepreneur. And we'll explain to you what is the challenge. Some years ago, it's still now with another level, because we already went through some barriers. We went ahead. And what happens? I worked a lot of time in the pharmaceutical industry and about cigarettes in health. I was a specialist in the drugs beat cigarettes. You look in the streets, the gardens, the sea, the rivers, you see all kinds of cigarettes thrown there. And things, there are laws. The ONU has something, not just the waste or residues, which is most found in all environment. It's also toxic. It's more than 7,000 toxic substances. And what impacts us? It's invisible. We never hear anything about it. We don't talk about it. But the environmental impacts are gigantic. So look, the issue of stopping to smoke is fundamental. People shouldn't smoke due to the impact against health, which is very well known. But who talks about these impacts? So luckily, we have to do about this. And here nobody talks about this, about the opportunity to be here. The challenges for sustainability and environment are gigantic and multiples, but opportunities are also pertinent. And maybe we took this opportunity to work on this residue, which is called point of cigarettes. It's because of a habit of society, it's all over the world. So we search alternatives. We create some, but we understand that the multidisciplinarity of the actions for sustainability have to incorporate it in the actions and in the works done. So we went to universities and understand how to deal with this. And we found, luckily, in the University of Brasilia, a technology that transforms residues of cigarettes into newspaper paper. And this paper, we were able to develop a mechanism of work to generate income. As you see in these agendas, in this flower, that is made from cigarette ends, and you can use it in the house. We have a space here where we show you other things also done like this. Not just the technology, It's physical and with chemistry. And we built, as the Secretary mentioned, a first plant to transform bits of cigarettes in the world. It's a 100% Brazilian technology. And in this area, the great innovations technologically, they come from outside to Brazil. And this one is ours. It was developed in Brazil. And not to take it to talk longer, I would like to talk with the teacher Tatiana. Luckily, our company has a good concept and has this social issue and this responsibility. And we continue studying and doing partnerships. And together with USP in São Paulo, we have the possibility to treat our rivers because we send this for a plant that treats this. And so 100% of our operation is sustainable. Now with USP, we can transform this in bug killing or in a product to be used or something that kills insects in general, fleas and etc. But we can also transform it into medicine for treatment. So see how many possibilities. We are partners in USP, in the pharmacy department, Dr. Palona and Professor Hesse that developed this possibility, and now we are dealing with the red tape. And I'm very happy to know that in the city of São Paulo, they support these initiatives. We are startups, but now we are in 78 cities, 7 states of Brazil, and we cover 700 companies, and they're adopting our work, not just stopping to smoke, but also not to impact it. While you don't stop smoking, put the thing in the right place, because we can diversify and increment the economy. We pay taxes, and better than that, we make a work of income and work. We do it in Campinas, where the therapies are made in the elaboration of the mass and the paper, and then they produce beautiful materials that are sold to generate income. Companies that contract us buy these things from Pai and other cities and places where we act. And for the Secretary of Manaus, I have a surprise for you. The Theater of Manaus was 125 years old in April, and this week they came to the theater a box recycled from butts of cigarettes in Manaus, so that we do this work to move the whole society so that we change this behavior and bring to society a way to change the world. Thank you very much. Undoubtedly, those that recycle are inspiring. And now to close this table, I think we have virtually a great partner of São Paulo City, Luisa Santiago, from MacArthur Foundation, Helen MacArthur Foundation, adopted one of the principles for recycling. I would like to point out that it has the participation of several secretaries. I floor to Luisa Santiago. Good afternoon. I hope you hear me well. First, it's a pleasure to be in this panel with you. It is very important. I'm sorry that I still can't get the plane and be in São Paulo. I would love to be there with you. to be with you. This is so important for this discussion. Tatiana mentioned this is this is the theme of this foundation, Ellen MacArthur, to accelerate globally this economy. It's a way to put in practice, and it's a very interesting way to bring it to the people which are more away, because we're talking of a way doing economy that is regenerative, generating values for generating opportunities, at the same time better conditions for growth that faces all their environmental issues and climate issues. It's also for economy. Our work at the foundation is what is circular economy. It's an idea, linear, it's one type. It works in the majority of the public economy. So we take out sources from nature and we waste it in many different ways, like the butts of cigarettes. It's a way of losing material values, but the quantity of loss for the economy is enormous, and it's not just material. It's obsolete for assets that are stopped, losses for the climate and for environment. All the issue for the environment is result of the linear economy. We extract, we use, and we waste. And we generate money the way we extract, transform, and waste. The circular way uses it completely differently. It's a model of transforming the system for an economy that has possibilities. First, to eliminate the pollution. We're not talking about looking of what's generated and you don't know what to do with it. We're talking about an economy that doesn't generate pollution and make circulate materials and products in the economy with the greatest value, to regenerate the nature. We mentioned sometimes the theme of agriculture, the food system, which is one of the most clear ways that we regenerate things. And we advanced a lot in the studies and the potential or economic advantage and of the circular economy. How do we put it in practice? This is a great focus. We go ahead with the knowledge to understand that, in fact, the economy, the linear economy that generates the concentration of richness, which is bad for the environment, it doesn't work anymore. The climate issue just shows us a little bit more the pandemic, the fragility of the linear phase of this economy. And the idea of a circular economy, it's an idea that has a lot of sense for those that think of having profit, because it will generate profit. It generates jobs and culture. It has to include those that are excluded in this model based on the linearity, which is exclusive and conservative. And the circular economy, it gives the agendas, climatic agendas, it puts it all together. For example, a study that we did about the climate issue, that we have a pre-COP, the greatest discussion in the world in such an important moment for the climate. I think 1 month and a half ago there was this discussion. It generates a report that discusses things at the end of the line, which is alarming, the report it generated. This discussion, it's extremely important to come to decisions in this planet to maintain the level of the climate and limits of temperature for a world to work. It's in fact very important so that we bring this to reality and this theme, the methods and models that make the economy not to be anymore provoking climate changes, but that it can talk to the nature, to the climate and the planet. For instance, the climate issue. Until a short time ago, great part of the discussion of the issues was around energy. But we need to talk about renewable energies. The calculations show that the change that we have, it's extremely relevant to the planet. For fossil energy, in fact, it's not resonant with the nature, but it faces 55% of the problem of the emissions. The other 45% of this problem are resulting of the way we produce and consume and use the products, main products of our economy, and food. So to face these other 45%, it will be crucial for the agreement of Paris. It's imperative that this transforms the way we run our economy with this transformation based on the sustainable economy. Already coming to the final part, so that others can talk, the idea of working, especially with São Paulo, first, they are people that accumulate companies, common activities and resources, and great parts of renovation and opportunity of interconnecting the greatest factors of economy, and also the cities, great part of the problem. As from the emissions of CO2 or residues that flow into the environment, and also the things that are buried. So they have to apply in practice their management and also to make peace among the people so that others, actors of economy, can come into this and practice it in a scale, so that this appliement in the economy will be a norm. The work in São Paulo today is one of the 3 cities to have strategy in the Foundation Ellen MacArthur, besides London and New York. The 3 cities, the 3 lights that are going to guide the way for the great cities of the world also to put into practice. Our relationship with São Paulo started 2018-19. It ended with the global incentives. We started to put policies based on the economy, And then we evolved to bring São Paulo into an initiative of food. When we see how much São Paulo already was integrated in this agenda, even if it was isolated, many initiatives that talked about the economy of food, and then entering in this partnership for food, São Paulo brought even another scale of integration, which is much better, more ambitious, with this image of food, with regenerative production in Parelheiros, where it's a project absolutely interesting and ambitious to transform a territory of food that feed the city in a way that regenerates nature, and including these agricultures in a plan that include the whole city. With the organic waste, it can be food for the earth. There are regenerative methods for agriculture, but also the issue of market, which actually are the ways that based on this food with ingredients based on this logic of regenerating. So initiative for food.
So it's a new system taking us last year, for instance, seeing São Paulo as a strategical partner for the foundation. Now we start a cooperation, a city that is in fact with diversity in economy. We have priorities for the city, professionally speaking, and also goods and services area, for a more sustainable and healthy environment, generating more job and more growth, economically speaking, to the city. From this point, when we started the business plan, the idea is having the actual capacity in the city of São Paulo, creating a roadmap to reach the target and having the first step and incorporating the public knowledge concerning sustainability with the public administration of the vectors involving the leaders, politicians of the city. All that is extremely important to be aware of. It's a big step of the trajectory to know how to go ahead, be bringing the public administration to the basis. And we want to work and go ahead as a city
Desculpa, um minuto para
with the
conclusão, Luísa. Nós
publics.
estamos com o tempo estourando, mas você tem um minuto, desculpe.
1 minute. That's the demonstration of the practice of this advancement in the other scenarios that are also a priority. And I thank you for the thought and attention.
Bom, encerramos esse
We
painel
close
que
this
foi o
panel,
sexto.
which is the
Agradeço a todos os
sixth one.
presentes pelas
I thank
participações,
all the
pelas tão
presents for the
enriquecedoras.
participation,
Agora
very
terá início
enriching.
o sétimo
And
painel,
we start the seventh
cujo tema
panel.
é a
Sevens.
resiliência, será mediado pelo colega
The
Ivanildo.
mediator
Muito obrigado.
is Ivanildo, our colleague Ivanildo.
Senhoras, senhores, vamos ao último painel do dia de hoje. O nosso tema é resiliência urbana.
The theme is
Então, vamos
urban
seguir
resilience.
Eu
Now
convido,
we make the
primeiramente, o
table,
secretário executivo de
firstly with the
Mudanças
Executive
Climáticas, Dr.
Secretary
Pedro
of
Pinheiro.
Climate Change, Dr. Pedro Pinheiro.
Convido também
I
o
invite
secretário executivo
the
adjunto
Executive
do ICLEI da América
Secretary
do Sul,
of
senhor
ICLEI,
Rodrigo
South
Conradi.
America, Rodrigo Corradi.
E convido ainda
And I
para a
invite
mesa o senhor
Marcelo
Romero,
Romero,
professor sênior livre docente da USP,
professor
PhD
at
em
USP,
estruturas ambientais e urbanas.
PhD in
Secretário,
urban
a palavra é
and
sua.
environmental structures.
Vamos combinar para
Let's
este
agree
painel,
in this panel.
os nossos expositores
Our
painelistas terão
talkers will
tempo
have,
de 7, 8
the
minutos
speakers
de
will
fala,
have
e
7
ao final
minutes,
abriremos para algumas
and we
perguntas
have
se
Q&A
houver
at the
de
end.
minuto a pergunta.
So the
Tudo bem?
talks will be around 7, 8 minutes, and then
Boa
we
tarde
have
a
Q&A.
todos.
Good
Nosso
afternoon.
painel hoje vai tratar de
Our panel
resiliência.
focuses on
Nós
resilience.
já conversamos no
We
início
talked in the beginning
desse seminário
of this seminar
e a palavra-chave
that the key
para a
word
questão das mudanças climáticas
concerning
na cidade de
climate
São Paulo
change in São
é a
Paulo
resiliência.
is resilience.
E a resiliência, ela
Resilience
é muito importante
Is very
porque ela
important
implica
because
na-
it
no
implies
preparo,
in
na
preparation,
mobilização
mobilization,
e no emprego dos
and
recursos
use of
necessários para a
resources
gestão da cidade,
required for
visando
city
fortalecer
management
a
to
cidadania,
strengthen
fortalecer os
citizenship,
cidadãos, né,
the
face
citizen,
aos eventos climáticos que tendem a
according
se
to
tornar
the
cada vez
events
mais
that
complexos,
are
né,
more
mais
complex,
extremos,
more
e,
extremes,
portanto, podem ferir
so and may
direitos
alter
e garantias que são
rights and
não
guarantees
somente
of the human
assegurados
being
pelas
that
legislações
are
nacionais,
assured by the
mas
legislation
reforçados
and
pelo próprio
reinforced
Tratado
by
Quadro de Mudanças
the
Climáticas. Né?
Treaty of
Entre
Climate
eles,
Change,
né, nós podemos destacar a necessidade
explaining
de redução das
the
diferenças
necessity to
sociais
reduce
e a
social
garantia,
difference
né, de alimentos
and
e
guaranteeing
segurança alimentar
food
para a população.
for the population.
Então, são garantias fundamentais
They are
que estão
fundamental
dispostas
and
no
they are
preâmbulo
in
do
the
Tratado
preamble
Quadro de Mudanças Climáticas,
of
né,
the
e
treaty
que
concerning
tem
climate
íntima
change.
vinculação com a questão da
And
resiliência face às
They
mudanças.
are
É,
linked to
para tanto,
resilience.
eu acho que nós já temos aqui
For that,
dois quadros
we have
importantíssimos
two
que
scenarios
vão
which are
discorrer
very
sobre o
important.
tema, né? E eu espero
And
aqui aprender com eles
I
muito
will
mais,
learn with
né,
the two
do que
colleagues
ficar
that
aqui
will have their
conversando, mas
talks.
porque acredito que a minha fala
I
já
believe
foi
that
dada
my word
no
is
quadro
already
adequado
passed
no período da manhã, né?
in the
Por favor,
morning.
devolvo aí a palavra ao
Now,
nosso apresentador. Obrigado.
Back to the
Vamos ouvir
introducer
agora, portanto, na sequência,
in the sequence,
o Rodrigo.
Mr. Rodrigo Conradi.
Higienizar.
Muito boa tarde
Good
a todos,
afternoon, everyone.
Uma satisfação estar
It's a
dividindo
pleasure being
essa
here,
mesa aqui tão bem posta,
making this table
tão bem posicionada para poder
with
fazer,
colleagues
acredito, acima de tudo, um período muito mais de reflexão.
that
Eu vou
are
somente
with food
esquentar
for
os sabores
thought.
que o professor poder nos colocar
And in
na sua
fact, I'll
cátedra de
put
maneira
some
mais,
thoughts here and pass to my colleagues
mais azeitada
that can
nesse
do
final de
it
tarde.
better than
Mas
I.
eu tenho a satisfação de cima de
I'm
tudo de
pleased
colocar o tema da resiliência
to be
urbana
here
dentro
talking about
do
resilience
Espaço da Fala, que é a organização que eu represento
in
aqui,
the
que
talk
coloca, né?
of the
Então,
organization I represent here.
é uma organização que fez governos locais pelo desenvolvimento sustentável.
It
É uma
is
organização de 31
about
anos que tem a satisfação de ter São Paulo como sua
sustainable
associada, uma
development,
das mais
31
antigas do
year
Brasil.
old, and
Uma
São Paulo is
organização
one of the
sediada no
oldest
ICLEI da América do
partners.
Sul, sediada aqui,
ICLEI is
nessa
based in
cidade,
this city
onde nós
in
temos
Latin
tanto
America,
o nosso escritório
and we have our
regional
office,
da América do Sul,
regional,
quanto o nosso Brasil, sediados aqui, tenho a
and
satisfação de
Brazilian
poder ter caminhado
and
para cá.
South American
E
office.
nesse contexto,
And in this
o ICLEI trabalha
context,
sobre uma perspectiva de
ICLEI
desenvolvimento
has the
sustentável,
perspective
e eu vou
on
explicar muito
sustainable
rapidamente o contorno geral
development.
e puxar a resiliência
The
para ver como que a gente se
contours
coloca dentro desse
will be
espaço,
presented
para
and
fortalecer o
resilience
que a
will
gente
be in
entende
the
como
center of
resiliência
it.
urbana e o caminho que nós
What
temos
is
dentro do
urban
contexto
resilience, what's the
tanto da
way
perspectiva da adaptação quanto da mitigação
concerning
climática.
adaptation
A
and
gente
mitigation?
entende que os acordos
We understand
que
that
promovem o desenvolvimento
agreements
sustentável dentro
on
de todo o sistema internacional,
sustainable development
naquilo que eles focam
internationally
os governos locais, e a gente tem
in
governos locais
local
como governos tanto
governments,
aqui estaduais como
i.e.
municipais
state
aqui no
and
Brasil,
municipal.
eles são acordos que
They
tentam
are
trabalhar sobre 5
agreements
dimensões.
with
Nós
5
trabalhamos essa
dimensions.
perspectiva das 5 dimensões de
That's the
desenvolvimento sustentável.
perspective.
Ele tem que ser de baixo carbono,
It has to
ele
be
tem
low
que
carbon,
promover soluções baseadas na
promote
natureza,
solutions based
ele tem que
on
trabalhar
ecotourism,
sobre um desenvolvimento que
working
promova
on
a
development
lógica da
to
circularidade.
promote
Ele
circularity,
tem que ser
mobility.
centrado nas
It has
pessoas
to be
resilientes.
centralized on
E eu
resilient
me
people.
volto aqui à fala do nosso
Then,
secretário
Our
justamente
secretary has
sobre
pointed out
desses componentes de
one of
eixo,
these
que é a
components,
característica
one
que o
axle,
desenvolvimento, quando ele não é pensado, centrado nas
is
pessoas, ele
centered
perde a
on
capacidade
people.
de eficiência e de
If not,
eficácia
it
da
won't
construção
be
de políticas
efficient
públicas.
in
Nós não
public
estamos
policies.
trabalhando em algo, nós estamos
So
trabalhando
we're
sobre a
working
necessidade de
on
pessoas
something
que vão
concerning people's
viver no mundo,
need that
estão
are
vivendo
living
no
in
mundo,
this
em
world,
que as condições
and
adversas
the adverse
necessitam
conditions
já
have to
hoje
be
no
tackled
conceito de adaptação,
nowadays and
que já
adapted
hoje nos imprime
Today,
uma necessidade de ação
with
que já
a push
não
to
é mais uma ação
the direction
de pensamento
to the
social.
action that
Nós não
goes
estamos
beyond
mais
the
trabalhando
thought.
sobre um conceito
We are not
de
working on
como vamos nos
concepts only,
preparar
how
para
to prepare
as mudanças
ourselves to the
E
climate
acho que aí que eu
change.
contorno a nossa visão
Then,
sobre resiliência urbana.
That's the contour of
Muito
our
aí trabalha
view
sobre uma
concerning
dinâmica que,
urban
principalmente na
resilience.
agenda urbana
Clay
internacional,
works
depois da
internationally
parte3,
in the urban
dos seus
agenda
eixos de
with an
articulação
axle
específica é a
axle
resiliência
specifically
urbana como eixo do desenvolvimento
urban
sustentável
resilience,
para os territórios
supporting
urbanos.
sustainable development. There's no perspective saying that resilience is connected only to risk and disasters. Internationally speaking, risk and disaster is a characteristic of considering resilience in a different way. And so he knew when the dynamic was that. In this process, we had, above all, a view of resilience that is more holistic. It tries to work on the perspective that when you consider structure and concepts urbanly, having an idea of adaptation, you cannot consider only in physical aspects. You have to consider that
não nos importa pensar como é que eu
not
construo tal
only
coisa.
in the construction
O meio da construção é
way.
fundamental. O
Of
material
course, it's
é
fundamental. The
importantíssimo.
material is very
O tempo de
important.
construção
Time
é
for construction
elemento
is key
importante nessa questão.
in
Mas
this issue.
vão passar pessoas por ali, não?
But let us
As pessoas
consider
é que vão
people.
viver aquele
People will
O
live
território,
that
ele só
space.
faz sentido
Territory
quando
makes
habitado.
sense
Essa
only when
característica
there
da
is
urbe, né?
habitation.
Nós estamos juntos
So
no espaço
inhabitant,
porque esse espaço faz sentido para as pessoas
because it
estarem
makes
juntas.
sense
Então,
for
se a
people
gente
to be
pensar
together.
a lógica do
If you
risco de
consider
desastre, e
the
aí
risk and
a
disaster
concepção
logic,
normal, né, a gente pensa sempre que
we always
elementos
consider
fundamentais
that
da pauta
fundamental
climática
elements
trabalham em
in
cima de
the
dois eixos,
climate
né, dois momentos.
subject has two
Você fala sobre o
moments.
processo de
You talk
mitigação,
about
então eu
mitigation,
ataco a produção da
I
estrutura
tackle
carbonífera ou
the
da produção
carbon
baseada no
production
carbono, e
or production based on
peço,
carbon,
e eu faço todo
and
um
I
sistema,
do
nós estamos aqui numa
all the
PreCop,
system.
justamente que
We are
trabalha
having
sobre
a
a
PreCop
referência do
working
Acordo de Paris 1.5 como uma
based
meta
on
de
the
construção global
Paris
para que nós não
Agreement
tenhamos
in order
uma desconstrução
we avoid
do sistema
the
humano. Né? Eu
construction.
sempre gosto de falar que quando a gente fala de
When we
mitigação,
talk about
a gente
mitigation,
é muito
mitigation,
a gente é
we're
muito egoísta,
inclined
do jeito correto.
to
Tá?
selfish
O mundo ele vai ser alguma coisa. A gente não
position.
sabe o que vai ser
We
se o
don't
mundo
know
for a
how the
2.5,
world will
3.4.
be
Na verdade, a gente sabe um pouco porque a
3.4,
gente tem projeções muito específicas para
We
demonstrar.
should put out
Ele só não vai ser
selfish
suscetível, ele só não
position.
vai ser adaptado a nós. Nós não vamos, na
Maybe
realidade, melhor.
we, in
Nós é que não vamos
reality,
estar adaptados a esse mundo.
won't be adapted
Ou vai
to
ser muito
it,
difícil a
or it
construção
will be
dessa adaptação.
hard to
Então, o
build this
ataque da mitigação é
adaptation.
para tentar
So
evitar a
attacking
complexidade
mitigation
do
is
segundo ciclo.
avoiding
O adaptar.
complexity
O
of the
adaptar, ele
second
é onde a
cycle.
resiliência se constitui. Né?
It's
Eu
where
me
the
adapto de uma
resilience
maneira
is
proativa e
constituted.
colaborativa, né?
I adapt
para
myself
aquele
in
mundo
a
que está à minha
proactive
volta.
way for the
Eu
world that
acho
is
que
around me.
os os processos,
So the processes,
principalmente que nós estamos
mainly
envolvidos dentro da
those that
agenda
were
global,
involved, the
que
global
foca na
agenda, focused on
perspectiva
perspective of
da constituição dos grandes marcos
constitution of
de mitigação,
big
eles são
landmarks
cada
of
vez mais hoje
mitigation.
vistos como
They are
necessariamente
seen
conectados com a adaptação.
as
Nós não
adaptation
podemos pensar
connectivity.
que a mitigação
So
ela é
mitigation
o grande
is
ariete
not
da causa
the
climática
biggest
desconectado da
issue
adaptação. E aí
of
que essa
climate
visão de
change
resiliência
if you consider it's
complexa,
not linked to
transversal,
adaptation.
que tem
That's why it's
conectividade não
transversal.
somente
It
com
has
a estrutura,
connectivity not
mas
only in terms
com
of structures,
quem essa estrutura
but
vai estar envolvida,
with
vai
those
ser
that are
tão
involved in
fundamental.
this
Quando a gente
structure.
fala sobre
When
uma
we talk about
infraestrutura resiliente,
infrastructures,
não é
resilient
somente pensar na
infrastructures,
supercapacidade
it's not only the
de
overcapacity
materiais de serem
in terms of
de sobreviverem
material,
a altas temperaturas ou
in high
situações extremas de
temperatures,
vento ou as condições como você vai
surveillance
adaptar
of adaptation
a estrutura de enchentes
concerning
dentro dos espaços
floods
urbanos.
in
Você
the
está,
urban
acima de tudo,
spaces.
pensando que essa infraestrutura
You
tem
have
que
to
pensar
consider the
como ela vai ser utilizada.
infrastructures
Como que ela
being
vai ser
in
trabalhada?
use,
Qual é o custo que eu vou ter para conseguir fazer essa
What's the
recuperação?
cost to do
Como é
this
que eu vou fazer
regaining?
isso dentro de uma
How do I
realidade
do that
que
in
pode
a
ser
reality
uma para um
that may
país
be
em alto grau de desenvolvimento
one
econômico
for a
e outra para um
developed
país
country
em
and
uma posição
another for
intermediária
an
como o Brasil?
underdeveloped
Para
country or
regiões no
developing
Brasil
country
em que essa
like
realidade
Brazil.
então é tão difícil.
In regions
Então,
where there is
fico muito
disparity,
confortável sobre a dinâmica da
as is the
resiliência
case of
urbana,
Brazil.
porque eu entendo também que ela é algo
Understand that
muito novedoso, né? A gente está muito
human
pouco tempo com essa
aspects,
dinâmica da
this
resiliência
dynamic
como
of
ponto de fala
resilience as
no
talk
debate urbano.
in the urban
Infelizmente,
debate.
a
It's
gente,
new.
como todos os grandes temas, a
And
gente tem que
of
trocar
course, the
o pneu
biggest
enquanto a gente
things
está andando com o carro.
always have to
Então,
be
as
like when
tentativas
you
de
are
diferentes
traveling and
processos
you
e
have to
sistemas
change the
foi de tentar
tire
encontrar
with the
conceitos.
car running.
Os conceitos, eles
It's
são
not
sempre
easy.
fundamentais
The
para a gente poder
concepts
entender o
are
nosso espaço de
fundamental
fala.
to
Eu acho que
understand
por isso que
the
eu sempre
participation.
me coloco muito
That's
satisfeito
why
em
I
pensar que a
say
minha
I'm
organização
always
promove
pleased that
uma
my
ideia de
organization
resiliência inclusiva,
promotes
que ela
inclusive
pensa dentro dos
resilience
processos
when we
desses 5
consider
grandes eixos que eu comentei
the
com vocês.
5 axes
Acima
that
de
we
tudo,
discussed.
eles são síncronos.
Above all,
Eu não consigo
they
fazer um
are
processo de resiliência
synchronous.
se eu não penso numa estrutura de
If
baixo
I do
carbono,
not
em soluções
consider
baseadas na natureza,
low
que
carbon
estejam envolvidas numa
solutions
estrutura
for
de
the
desenvolvimento circular
nature,
e, acima de tudo,
so
que seja centrada nas pessoas.
development
Então,
of
minha
mobility,
reflexão,
circular
assim, acima de tudo,
movement.
é
So
fortalecer
my
a
thought is
dinâmica,
strengthening
como pensar
the
a adaptação
dynamic
climática
aspect,
como eixo
adapting
fundamental e
climate
intransferível do
change.
debate
It's
climático.
fundamental, not transferable
Segundo ponto,
in this debate.
entender
Second point,
e avançar com a
understand and go
compreensão
ahead
em outros
with
espaços
it in
e
other
falar sobre
spaces.
resiliência,
Talking
algum
about
tempo atrás, eu já
resilience,
fui chefe de resiliência de
I
uma cidade
was
brasileira que
the
alguns
head
anos
of
atrás.
resilience
E eu me lembro que
subject
quando eu
some years
falava
ago
sobre
in another
resiliência,
city.
eu tinha que
When I mentioned
apresentar
it, I
charts.
had to
Eu tinha que
present
apresentar PowerPoints. A coisa era
PowerPoints
quando eu falava resiliência,
because
era uma coisa de
people did
engenheiro.
not understand it.
Então,
They
há
considered it was
muito pouco
engineering
tempo,
talk.
nós estamos nos adaptando a uma
We are
ideia que
adapting
hoje, quando o
ourselves to
secretário
an
nos coloca,
engineer that
vai
the
com
secretary
muita naturalidade
points
dentro
out.
da casa,
It's
né?
very
Hoje,
natural.
quando você
Nowadays,
debate
when
sobre
you
perspectivas de
debate
resiliência,
about
você se encontra
resilience
já
perspectives,
com
you are
com conhecimento adquirido
in an
dessas
environment
questões e
with
simplesmente
knowledge.
também, se não um entendimento completo,
If not
uma
a complete
compreensão daquilo que é
understanding,
necessário
but an understanding
para
of
o
what
seu
is
trabalho.
necessary for
Eu
your
acho
work.
que esse momento
And I think
importante
this
nós
is an important
fazer com que
moment
a
in which
dimensão
we
da
are now,
resiliência
to
seja
see
vista
the
como
dimension of resilience
necessário
as
complemento
necessary,
da
as a
perspectiva da
complement
mitigação.
of the perspective
E fazer
for
com que
mitigation.
essa visão de
And
resiliência
seeing
seja
that this
muito
view
focada
of
a não
resilience
ser uma
to
ideia
be
somente
very
da
focused not
infraestrutura,
just an
e ser sempre
idea
uma
of their
ideia de
infrastructure,
planejamento
but
urbano,
as
de
a
concepção,
urban
de gestão de
planning,
orçamento, de
concept of
concepção de
budgeting,
pensar como fazer
concept
os
of how
investimentos públicos
doing
com
the
qualidade,
public
com compreensão
investments
de resultados,
with understanding
compreensão
and with
de
a
resultados,
result
e esses
differentiating is
serem
there
colocados
to be
a benefício
put
das
forward
pessoas que vão ter
for
que elas sim
people
fazer o trabalho da adaptação
that
mais
they
difícil
can do
das
the
concepções
adapting
da sociedade,
the
das
difficult
mudanças de
adapting
parâmetros e
society
de
with
códigos que nós
parameters
vamos
and
romper.
codes
Como
that
sempre,
we
né?
will have
Estamos
as
aqui em
usual.
massa, nós nos adaptamos a uma
We
realidade
adapt to a reality
gritante em muito pouco tempo.
which is
Nós vamos ter uma
shouting
necessidade de
in a
adaptação
very
muito
short
grande
period.
nas
We will
décadas que
need
virão.
the
E
great
nós vamos
adaptation in
entender a
these
ideia de
future
resiliência
times
como parte disso.
and understand resiliences
Obrigado,
and
fico à
see
disposição.
its fundamental. Thank you very much.
Com a palavra, o professor Marcelo
The
Romain.
floor to Professor
Muito
Marcelo
obrigado. Dá para colocar a
Romero.
apresentação, por favor?
Please, my
Bom,
presentation.
eu agradeço, em primeiro lugar,
I
o
thank
prefeito de São Paulo,
first
a secretária
the
de
Mayor
Relações
of São
Internacionais
Paulo
pelo
and
convite,
the
e,
International
sobretudo,
Relations for the
pelo
invitation,
secretário
and
de
mainly
Mudanças
for the
Climáticas, Pedro Pedro,
Climatic
que,
Changes
enfim,
Secretary
estou muito
Pedro
honrado de
Pedro.
participar
I'm
desse
very
momento.
honored to participate in this
Foi
moment.
muito bom
It
a
was
fala
very
do
good,
caro
the talk
colega que me
of
antecedeu,
this colleague that spoke
Clay,
before
porque
me,
eu tenho
Clay,
mais ou menos a mesma
because I have more or
ideia
less
desses
the same
fatos.
idea of
O
these
próximo, por favor.
facts. Next.
Eu realmente, primeira
First
vez que eu me deparei com a questão
First
da
time I
resiliência, tive que ser
saw
confrontado
resilience,
com a questão
I had to
dos
face
planos de
the issue
adaptação
of
climática.
adapting
Então,
plans for the climate,
qual é, na verdade, a grande
which is
diferença
the great
desses dois
difference
instrumentos?
of these two
Então,
instruments.
hoje está
So
claro
presently it's
para mim,
clear for me
evidentemente que eu posso
that
mudar de
evidently I
opinião,
can
a gente pode
change
conversar a
of
respeito.
opinion, we can talk
Que
about
eles
it,
têm
that
identidades
they
e
have an
essências
identity
diferentes.
and different
O plano de mudança
essences.
climática, os planos
The
de mudanças climáticas, eles
plans for
tratam de
climate
mitigação,
change, they treat
basicamente de
mitigation
mitigação de efeito das
of
mudanças
effect of the
climáticas
changes
nas
in the
cidades,
climate in
entendendo
cities,
que nós
understanding
escolhemos
that we
as
choose
cidades
the
para
cities
habitar. Hoje
to
somos
live in.
pouco mais de
Today we are a
50%
little bit
das
more,
pessoas
50% of
habitando cidades
people
no planeta.
living in cities
Brasil
in
muito
the
mais
planet.
que isso. E
Brazil has
caminharemos
much more than
proximamente para
that,
75%.
and we are
Quer dizer, é
going
nosso ambiente
into the
urbano. E
75%.
as mudanças
Our
climáticas são
problem
uma
is
realidade.
urban,
Então,
and the
esses
climate
planos
changes are a reality. So
precisam, de
these
fato,
plans have
acontecer.
to
Planos de
happen. In
mitigação.
fact,
Eles
they are
podem mitigar,
mitigation
estão
plans.
mitigando
They
alguns
are
efeitos.
mitigating some effects.
Entretanto,
However,
essas mudanças
these climate changes
já
affect
estão afetando
are
as
already
cidades
affecting
agora.
the cities presently.
Nós estamos
We
trabalhando
are
para
working
mitigá-las.
to
Mas,
mitigate
não
them,
obstante,
but
estamos sofrendo
nevertheless we are
agora
suffering
efeito dessas
presently the
ações
effect of
humanas
these
no planeta.
human actions in the
Aí
planet.
entra o plano de
And
resiliência.
there we
Ele
come
entra
into
para
the resilience
mitigar
plan
esses
to mitigate
impactos
these
nas
impacts
cidades.
in the cities.
Na verdade,
In fact,
eu tentei
I
eu encontrei
tried
dois verbetes
and
que
found
diferenciam esses
two
instrumentos.
words that differentiate these instruments.
Planos
Let's say the
de
plans
mudanças climáticas, eles
of
atacam
climate changes
muito as
attack
causas,
very much the
tentam
causes,
mitigar as causas.
trying to
E
mitigate
os
the
planos de
causes.
resiliência, eles
And
vão
the
mitigar
resilience
os
plans,
efeitos,
they
os
will
efeitos
mitigate
que
the
nós
effects
sentindo
that we are
agora.
feeling presently.
A cidade de
The
Nova York tem
New York
plano de
City
resiliência.
has a resilience plan.
Eu falo Nova York porque
I say New
eles
York
têm
because
documento muito
it
detalhado
has a
a
very
respeito. Mas
detailed
eles têm
document
segundo
about
plano,
this. And they have a second plan
que se chama
that's called
Plano de Mitigação
mitigation
de
plan
perigos,
for
que o colega
dangers
citou
that our colleague mentioned,
conceito.
this concept.
Esse plano,
This
na
plan,
verdade,
in
é um
fact,
plano de
is the resilience
urbana
plan,
da cidade de
urban
Nova York.
resilience
Quer dizer,
plan
plano
for the
que
city
vai
of New York.
mitigar
The
problemas
plan that will mitigate
que
problems
acontecem
that
agora na
happen
cidade.
presently
Uma
in the
série
city.
de
A series of problems.
por favor.
Next, please.
Então,
So
eu li com atenção
I read attentively
45 planos de
45 resilience programs
45 grandes
of 45
do mundo.
great cities in the
Nova
world.
York,
New York, Paris, Los Angeles, Boston, Berkeley, Atlanta, and many other cities.
tentei identificar
And I tried to identify
as estratégias,
the
as
strategies,
ações
the
de
actions,
mitigação
mitigation actions
das
of the
mudanças
effects
climáticas
of
e
climate
outros
changes
efeitos
and
desses
other
planos.
effects.
Esses planos, no fundo, a minha
These
pergunta é a
plans,
seguinte,
in
esses planos
fact,
tratam do quê?
what do they
Eles
deal
falam
with?
do quê?
What do they talk
E
about?
agrupei
And I grouped them
22 itens.
in
Eu
22
encontrei
items
22
that I
itens
found,
diferenciados.
differentiated
Foi muito
8
importante
items.
ter feito isso, porque
And
eu
it was
consegui
important to do this
visualizar
because I was
quais
able
são
to
os
see
itens
which
mais
are the
abordados
more
por essas
discussed
45
items
cidades.
by these 45 cities.
Para minha surpresa,
And I was
o
surprised
item mais
that the
abordado, eu não fazia
most
ideia que era
talked item, which I had no idea
isso. Educação,
was the prepare for
Preparar
education.
a
Prepare
preparar
the population for an event of this size, any event, either climate change or not. The cities are vulnerable, and it was interesting to see the cities deal with that. So this map was very important to see where these global cities were looking at, and from where do they expect problems, and how they are getting prepared to face them next. Well, there, based on those items, I'm working with my postgraduate students in São Paulo City after 2 years with about 60 students. We studied the city of São Paulo and we aggregated the problems and we came to 15 items that we say that the city should be prepared to urban stress situation. Water, for sure, floods, supplying energy, supplying food. The Secretary spoke about it twice today. There's a student of mine for Masters to see how São Paulo can prepare itself for an interruption of food supply, and this can happen. Yes, it can. I saw São Paulo strike of truck drivers, and shelves in the supermarket started to be emptied, and it was solved, but it could have made a much greater problem for food. And the residues, solid and urban, mobility, which was well discussed today, dwelling, health, natural disasters linked to climate changes, disasters which are not natural, some made by us people, beyond the climate changes that the city doesn't know about it, but it has to be prepared for that. Connectivity, lack of internet, stopping internet. 1 or 2 days ago, we didn't have the WhatsApp program, in Instagram and Face. We didn't even know what this was some years ago, but now I am totally dependent of this program. I talk to the whole world with this small app. Imagine staying without that for 1 month. Data safety. Is the city ready for that, for an attack of hackers? This can happen, yes. It can attack a mayor, a city hall, a city. I saw many cities in the world with plans, mitigation plans and adapting plans for this. This can happen in São Paulo. It's happening in several cities around São Paulo, training the people, very imminent in these 45 cities. And the item we showed the students, showing that eventually the urban planning of the city, thinking of the climate, this plan, can it help? Of course it can help. So these are things that came from where we thought that could take part of urban resilience in a city like São Paulo. Certainly, some of the items are connected, like water and energy, like country like Brazil, it's completely connected. If there's no water, there's no energy. So some items are a strong link, and others have a weaker link. But these links, weak or strong, they should be extremely considered in such a plan. New York, this was mentioned today several times. These plans are transversal plans. They do not construct themselves in a secretary. They can have a secretary that will house and lead these plans, but they're plans that are absolutely transversals to all the secretaries and governmental departments. Meetings like these, in the case of New York, these are the great actors that participated in the writing of the plans in New York. You'll find here all the great departments involved in a city: water, energy, mobility, safety, police, all that you can imagine. So I think that in the city like São Paulo, this happens in the same way. There's a secretary that keeps several things, and it goes through several partners, several hands. And the next one, a plan like this one, this detailing, I only saw in New York. I never found it in any other 50 plans. Perhaps today there is already. But New York made the plan like I believe should be made. If São Paulo goes this way, I believe we will need to have this format. So here we have the category of the item, one of those 15s in our case, the action of mitigation that is being proposed for mitigation, who is leading it, and who is the department that is head of this, the period of extension of that action, the cost of that action. I didn't find in other cities the cost of that action, where the money comes from, the status in a certain moment, and the subjective, which was reached or not. And this plan goes ahead. The plan needs go through these stages, and maybe less quantity of lines. It doesn't need the lines like New York, about 500 lines. But it is very important that each line, each action has a leader, a budget, origin, chronogram, stage, and status to have it, to make it through, come through. So I believe this is my last slide. I am certain that São Paulo City needs a tool like this because it suffers daily of actions, and it needs to be prepared because we don't know exactly where will the next big action come from and the menace come from. I remember being in New York after Sandy's hurricane, and I asked the center if they thought that the city was going to suffer a new Sandy. And they said hurricane. And they said, certainly, I'm absolutely sure. We just don't know when, but it's sure that there will be a new Sandy hurricane that covered the 5 parts of New York. But São Paulo is subject to problems, that's sure. I don't know when and how hard, but I went through many. That's it, my colleagues. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Marcelo Romero. Are there any questions? No questions? Let's go through the final considerations by Dr. Pedro Pinheiro. First, I would thank the more than 150 internauts that were with us and are still with us in each panel. We apologize for the technical hazards, and I thank the panelists, and I announce for you present that in the virtual world that our panels start at 10:30 with much more messages and sharing that enrich PreCop. Thank you. Believe me, it's Pinheiro Pedro. Pedro is the surname. Pinheiro is my first name. I want to say how happy I am about this first day of PreCop. It was extremely productive. The talks were wonderful. We learned a lot since this morning. And this also exposes clearly that we're in a city that's compromised with facing climate changes, and it's preparing itself to face this with programs and plans, and also bringing within its structure all these intellectual contributions which are important for the ideas, partnerships that already are there, and the partnerships that are being constructed. Dr. Marcelo Romero is a partner. It's among us, it's an old partnership because we are together since the 90s. So we have worked together since USP, Marcelo. So it's about Eco 92 and from there on. It's nice to be able to see that we're all here gaining knowledge and increasing our resilience. This is more important. So I would like to send my optimistic message and satisfaction by seeing this engaging and this work that's being developed by our administration. Thank you very much for all of you, and see you again tomorrow for our second day. Thank you, everyone, in name of the International Relations Secretary. See you tomorrow.